Assalamualaikum and welcome to another episode of MnM. My name is Rabia Gharib, and in the studios today I've got somebody very special. We've often talked about issues pertaining to motivation or motivating the workforce. Motivating, that's a whole joke which I'll tell you about later, but motivating the workforce. And when you talk about how you actually get across to getting people to do what you want, there's a lot of skill involved in that. And that's why I'm thrilled to have Lucy Cornell, the Chief Inspirational Officer of her organization, come into the studio and talk to us about that. So hi, how are you?
Thank you for
And
having me.
You're from Australia.
I am from Sydney.
So say something in Australian.
G'day, mate.
Oh, good day to you too.
I've been accused of being British while I'm here. I'm trying to be very polite and eloquent so I can be understood, but I should really be Australian.
You should be.
Yeah.
Be yourself.
Yeah.
So what do you do, Lucy?
So I'm a voice coach.
Okay.
That's my trade. Originally, I have been trained as a teacher and then spent, I'll give you the short version of it, spent 5 years training towards working with the master of voice. There's 2 masters of voice in the world,
okay,
who teach voice for theatre and for actors. And Kristen Linklater is one, based in the UK, in the United States, but she comes from Scotland, so she has sort of a foot in both camps. And to get to her, it's a master apprentice system, and you train on your own voice for a year, and then you train with other people, and you look at how to work with their voice, and then you go to America 2 or 3 times, and from Australia, that's the other end of the world.
Right.
But ultimately, you get to work with Kristen, with 15 other people from around the world, and train to become a voice coach. So there are now only 150 Linklater voice teachers, which is her technique, who work on the voice and traditionally in the theatre, so mostly academics and for actors.
So I'm sorry, what's a voice coach? What do you do?
A voice coach, yeah, a voice coach. Well, for actors, what they need to learn is to have a free voice that can communicate any thoughts or feelings. What I do is I take those techniques that a voice coach for actors would use, and in my business in Australia, have woven those techniques into the business world. So I now work with predominantly business people, and I travel globally with CEOs mostly and the C-level executives on getting their voice more connected, more persuasive, more influential, and in fact why I'm here in Pakistan is to look at having more inspiration in speaking. So that's what I do with business people mostly.
But isn't that a cultural phenomena from country to country, since you do skip across a lot of countries?
Yeah.
So how do you overcome the cultural phenomena?
Well, every time I come to a new country, I travel quite a bit, and I'm really fascinated. In fact, this is a book in the making for me of the voice of culture.
And you heard it right here?
Yes, first time. I haven't quite done it yet, but it's coming.
News to be broken.
News, yes, stay tuned. So the idea is that I would look at, when I come to a country, I listen to the voice of the people. And I notice that, and I want to make the distinction between speech and voice. So voice meaning the quality of the sound and what's carried in the sound of these human voices. So really interestingly, to give an obvious example, the Japanese quality, particularly for women, is one that's quite small and pull back and pull up, light, and that's certainly a reflection of their culture for women. In Singapore, I was very interested in working with Singaporeans because they have quite a disembodied voice. It's very much of the intellect. It's very, they all have, I felt a lot of jaws. They have very tight jaws, Singaporeans, because they have to hold back. They have no right to speak freely in Singapore, so their voice is very...
Speech or they have no right to express themselves. Is there a difference there?
Politically, politically they're censored.
Okay.
You know, they have no freedom of, they have a less freedom of speech over there than say Americans would. So when you hear an American, you know,
you can hear
it's all about,
off.
Right out here all the time. So that is because you look at their constitution is we have freedom of speech.
Right.
You know, so they're brought in very early age to be able to speak very confidently.
Right.
Although Australians, of course, we're perfect.
Of course.
But Australians, by comparison, will hear an American speaker and think, stop, there's too much energy there, you know. Because our problem as Australians is that we have a culture where if you express yourself too far or you stand out too much, you get cut down.
Okay.
So that we are all the same, which is part of our convict heritage, you know.
That's
we all
also
have to look
kind
after.
of strange because all of you are really tall.
Yes. No, vocally cut down.
Yeah, I know.
Yes. We're very tall.
Yeah.
So in Pakistan, I'm very interested. I've come to Pakistan and I immediately start listening to what's the voice here, what's the quality of sound, and what's the energy like. And over my very
brief visit,
but I can profess much in my brief visit. In my brief visit, what I've heard is, and I've worked with quite a lot of people, as I mentioned, we were talking about before.
Right.
I've done 10 workshops, 10 events while I'm here with corporate people, and have shaken many hands and have heard a lot of voices. And Pakistanis have a very passionate heart, vocal energy.
Really?
Yes, on one hand, and then on the other hand, can be very shy and very introverted.
Just like I am.
Right, very much so.
Yeah. So I'm the embodiment.
You shift between the two. And in doing research, you know, looking at your political leaders over the time, that is certainly, you know, I've looked at, you know, both Benazir Bhutto and her father, and very, very vocally passionate.
Right.
You know, but then you look at Jinnah, who, as the founder of Pakistan, as a barrister, very eloquent and almost reserved in his speaking, but his language was what carried him out.
Right.
So I'm very interested in the Pakistani voice because I think that you're a culture of very passionate people, and how well shaped your argument is a completely another question.
Right.
So that's something I'm interested in looking at.
So how does that eloquence, now generically speaking, how does the eloquence get reflected within the organization? Because now we're talking about business everywhere is about dollars and cents and about efficiency and about, you know, meeting a bottom line or making sure that it's there. So that's pretty much similar in every organization around the world. Now you're saying that when you travel from country to country, you listen to different voices, but at the end of the day, we're all striving to have global connections. So how does that play in to what we're trying to do and how far we're getting to it?
In terms of voice and speaking?
In terms of voice.
Yes. Yeah, we live in a very commercial world, and in business it really does come down to, in a mercenary sense, the commercial dollar. We have to look at profits, or the rupee, sorry, the rupee. We have to look at our profits. I think that if we were to only do that, let's just transact on paper.
Right.
We've got humans to communicate with, and we have humans to lead.
Right.
And I think it would be a sad state of the world if we were to only transact on that. If we were only to do transactional.
Right.
We also have to look at the relational connections in business. The people that, and I've seen it time and time again, and you see it in the political leaders and the inspirational speakers of the world. You know, you look at Martin Luther King or Nelson Mandela or you know, even Queen Elizabeth I, or any of your leaders here. They were inspirational speakers, and their belief and their conviction and their vision that they were able to eloquently communicate drew their followers. And that's what, you know, I think there are a lot of followers in the world that want a leader.
Right.
And if that leader can speak and move them, ultimately that's what speaking's about, is if you can move someone emotionally and intellectually and physically into action, that's when change will happen.
Okay.
So my business vision is about changing your world with inspirational speaking, because I do believe that's true. It's what we need.
Right.
Otherwise it just becomes about this there's no soul left. Yeah.
Right. So putting the soul back into business.
Putting the soul back into business, that would be nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we've just started off on a potential joint venture right here. So how difficult is it to find CEOs or C-level people who are also leaders, because they're not synonymous?
No, that's true. That's true.
What's the biggest challenge that they have to overcome?
The biggest challenge they have is that most people who are launched into or pushed into or elevated into a C-level position is often a specialist. They're technically there. They're there for their technical expertise.
Right.
And along the way, I'd say 80%, not all of them, 80% of them haven't had the practice of speaking. And speaking is an art form, and it's something that, it's a muscle you need to rehearse, and it's a fitness that you need to have. If particularly for technical people, information, CIOs and technology people.
CFOs.
And CFOs, certainly. I mean, I do a lot of work with IBM in Australia, and one of the biggest problems that these people have, and CIOs, CFOs, is that they are there because of their technical expertise. Right. And to actually then stand up in front of an audience and connect and come out of here and then go into here is a whole new scary world for them.
Right.
So that's the biggest problem, is how to get them rehearsing and going into their stretch zone so it's not too panic. Often they will panic, and their bodies, because speaking is an art of the body and of the heart and of the mind in combination, and their bodies will shut down on them if they haven't stretched. Yeah, it's just like a fitness. It's the same thing.
Can inspiration be rehearsed? I know it requires a lot of practice.
Inspiration can be
prepared for.
Yeah, it is. I have heard, as I'm sure you have, and as I'm sure many of your viewers have, heard many business presentations that are uninspiring. Yes, exactly. And I call them data downloads. Let's just give me the information. In fact, I had a...
You're starting to sound like the flight of the Conchords?
Flight of the Conchords.
Yeah,
how do you know about them?
I watched
Go New Zealand.
Humans Are Dead, that entire song track. I can't
remember. Yeah, I've seen them.
It's all about them. It's all about the fact that the humans are dead.
Humans are dead.
And there's no inspiration left.
They're our heroes. Let's make them the hero. Can you play that on this recording?
I will, back by popular demand.
Flight over to you.
Yeah.
So humans are dead. It's quite a sad state of affairs. But so inspiration can certainly be prepared. What I find is when I hear a lot of dull data download in speakers in business,
it was the data downloads.
Is that they will, they'll rely too heavily on PowerPoint, they'll rely too heavily on information, and it's all about the transactional part of the communication. What gets missed is the time spent around the vision or the story. There's always a story in numbers, always. And if the presenter can find the story, then what they're doing is they're appealing to the human connection to myth and humanity and core values. And if we can bracket or couch our information in a vision, then it's digested more effectively and more memorably. Because it's too hard to remember just numbers. But it's much easier to remember and communicate onwards the story of something.
But then in addition is the voice, it's also the charisma. Certain people speak really, really well, and they will move you. And these are people who you have perhaps never met or will never meet, but yet you remember them. How does that happen? Is that something that you also train people for?
So charisma and presence is either you're born with it or you can certainly learn.
Or fake it.
Or fake it, which a lot of people do. But I think as humans we can smell when it's faked, and we give them some credit, but not our complete commitment.
Sincerity can't be faked.
Huh?
Sincerity cannot be faked.
No, that's right. Okay. Sincerity and authenticity. And certainly in the world these days in business, there has been a shift from the 80s through to the noughties, now in the 2000s. That's what you call it. Okay, I'll start that again so you can
we
cut
call
that
them
if you want.
no, that's fine. Yeah, from the 80s till today.
Okay, that's nice. So there's certainly been a shift from the 80s until today. The 80s was a time where in Australia, in the West certainly, would be interested to hear about Pakistan, a bluff. It was a really vibrant time, a lucrative time, so we would bluff our way through, we could fake our way through, and now because of a lot of, I think because of globalization and cohesion of religions and spirituality, we've come into an age of authenticity. So in business, it's certainly about authenticity. And if you can speak from that authentic place, you have much more currency, I think. In terms of how you train someone to be more charismatic or inspirational, I look at 3 layers to speak through, or I consider 3 layers, that you certainly must start with an inner voice, an inner passion or an inner drive. So let's take Martin Luther King, for instance. His inner passion was one of, an absolute belief in inequality and freedom and justice. And he felt that on a deeply personal level. Then he can't just feel that. If you just feel that, that's nice for you, but it doesn't translate. Then he needs to be able to move that through his physical voice. So the inner voice is channeled through your physical voice. And I mean, when I point here, there's your larynx, but I talk about the physical voice being your entire energy. And that's where charisma comes in, that you can have an energy translating that inner passion. But then, that's fine, that could be just between you and me, but to become inspirational, you have to take it to that 3rd layer of amplification, which is one where you need to shape it with your language and elevate your concept. So he talks about it being a dream. I have a dream.
I have a dream.
So it's not just an idea, I have a dream. So that what he's appealing to is the human values, and that's where the story comes in. So it becomes about us as a race sharing an experience. And if I feel it, you can also feel it. And that's where the inspiration comes in.
So you shouldn't depend too heavily on a speechwriter.
Well, yes, if you've got a good one.
Yeah.
The danger with a speechwriter is,
hold on to him or her.
Hold on to him or her if you've got a good one, yes. The danger with a speechwriter is if you haven't got the relationship tied up well, it's always death to a speaker to get a speech and read it in here and then get up and speak it. It never works because they haven't spoken it, they haven't felt it through here, they haven't felt it through here, and then they haven't been able to live through it.
So what I'm hearing from you is conviction is very important.
Absolutely.
And belief in whatever you're going to be transferring.
Yes.
That's very important. And secondly, power of communication is extremely important. And those 2 things you have to pat down before you're able to get anywhere.
Yeah, and they're skills.
And they're skills.
They're skills that need to be learned. If you haven't learned them, and many people, because they've become specialists and they've lifted to that level, they don't practice that. So it is that's why there are voice coaches in the world.
That's speeching to an external audience, to a group of strangers. What about within the organization itself? Isn't it kind of dangerous, because a lot of companies here and abroad have have the C-levels surrounded by yes men. So it'll be the most disastrous presentation ever, which was floored people, and the yes men will still say, "Oh, that was great, boss."
Yeah.
How good are yes men? Are they good for the ego, or does it help the organization?
Of course they are. They're great for the ego.
You're doing such a good job right now.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you would. It depends on what kind of leader you are. If you need yes men, then go for it. But I don't see the value in that in terms of its support for the organisation. You do need. I think that's part of the problem for C-level people, is that they crave honesty, and they crave people around them that will tell them the truth. I work with an organisation globally called YPO, Young Presidents Organisation. And when I work with them, I have them running up to me saying, "Okay, tell me about me. What can I learn? What should I do? I need some time with you." No, they really crave that education because they don't have peers at their level telling them the truth. So I think they need to certainly align with networks or people of their level to give them that sort of feedback. And as a voice coach, I've learned, because I've worked with many C-level people, is to be very frank and very direct. I mince my words very much
I'm
talking about voice.
I can see that. So how am I doing?
You're doing very well. I'm a
You're
yes man right
yes,
now.
I know. How do you move or bring change or inspire your team who's perhaps heard the same spiel over and over again? I run a company. This is my dream. Come to my office every morning and we'll have a meeting and I'll tell you the same dream over and over again.
Yeah.
You're used to it.
Yeah.
How do you change that, and how do you kind of motivate the entire organization?
Yeah, that's dangerous when you're saying the same thing over and over and it becomes jargon. As I said, it's a fitness.
Right.
To speak is an opportunity. Any moment that anyone speaks should be an opportunity. And I think to shift your psychology from it being a job or being my role to communicate with my audience to an opportunity to change them, then it means it changes everything that you say. If you find you're saying the same thing over and over and the audience isn't changing, don't keep doing the same thing. And you'll see that in people when they do a speech. And then most people have this experience where they start speaking and in the middle of speaking they know their audience isn't connecting to them, and they see someone falling asleep, or they see someone yawning, or they see someone getting up and leaving. Most people will just keep going out of fear. Okay, I'll just get to the end.
Quick, forward.
Quick. Whereas the really artistic, smart, caring speaker will be one that says, I have to change right in this moment to keep them with me. And that's the same in an organization. If you're doing the same thing over and over and you're not connecting and you're not changing your audience, your job, and this is the work of a speaker or a leader, your job is to change so that they change, because they're following you. If you change, they'll change. And
how important is it for a C-level executive who's aspiring to do everything that you're saying, to be a good leader, to be an inspirational leader, how important is it for them to spend time being part of the audience?
Oh yeah, absolutely. To be part of their own
audience,
business, audience. Yes, I think it's really important.
Is that part of like a practice or a rehearsal?
Yeah, it's funny being in an audience. It's a nice experience. It's an important experience to sit in an audience and feel how the audience feels with you, and to feel because audiences work as a mass. They work as a team almost. But it's an energetic mass.
It can also quickly turn into a mob.
Yes, because it's energy. It's like a virus that moves through. If you as a speaker turn someone off in the audience, or you pick on someone, the whole audience will defend their fellow in the community. Similarly, if you're warm and you make someone feel accepted and acknowledged, the rest of the audience picks that feeling up. So it's a lovely, I talk about communicating as being energy management. You're constantly, it's like herding, it's like you've got a bowl of fish.
Were you going to say herd of buffaloes?
Herding buffaloes, or sheep, I was going to say, but buffaloes is much more interesting.
Okay.
Although more eloquent, more magical is a bowl of fish, and you want to pick up, you're trying to move the fish into another, pick it up and, you just suggest it. And maybe that's a silly analogy, but...
I'll tell you a good analogy.
Yes, go, you're better at it than me.
From the movie Babe.
Yes, exactly. It's the little pig.
The pig that wants to get the sheep to go. So after he's done with the code.
Beautiful.
Yeah?
Yeah.
There we go.
He sits there and asks them.
Yeah, he sits there and then he explains the code to them, which is Ba'aram.
Yeah.
Sheep, be true. Ba'aram you. Yes. There we go. I do, because I've watched it a million times.
Yeah.
But just the power of suggestion, to everyone else, it appears that he has done magic. Isn't that a better analogy?
I love the analogy, in fact. I'm going to steal that now.
That's fine.
Because what he's doing is that little sheep, a little pig.
Babe,
that little babe, is sitting, taking his time, being present, and just connecting. That's all he's doing, which is what we should be doing.
Yes.
Rather than pushing and, not connecting and hoping. It is really about, do I connect to my audience?
Okay, so making things more practical. How do we become less constipated? What's the first step?
Less constipated?
Yes.
In our speaking?
In our speaking, yes.
Breathe, breathe, breathe.
Okay.
It's breathing is what it's all about.
Okay.
If I'm to boil it down to anything, it's breath. Oddly, voice. But the thing that carries your inspiration out, your inner belief out, is your breath, is your voice, but the breath is the bridge between here and there.
Okay.
So if I'm breathing, your audience will be breathing. And often, it's true, constipated is a good word for it really, because if you're tight from anywhere there below, you'll be tight here.
Yes.
So what happens is I find 90% of the people I work with in business, in fact I think in the world, don't breathe.
Okay.
Unless you're trained, because these days to breathe and to really express myself out is dangerous often.
Right.
And it takes a lot of courage. The word that I use very, very often in my teaching is courage. That you have the courage to dare to be inspired. And there's that double meaning of inspiration, scientifically, breath coming in, but also that moment of, oh,
yes.
Right. And the two things are interlinked. It's interesting that it is the same word. When I breathe in order to communicate that feeling. So that's the key, breath.
So here's a tricky question for you. Do women make better communicators than men? No bias whatsoever, the fact that there are two women sitting here, but no bias.
But we are good communicators. So.
We are, right. Just check out our phone bills, for starters. Never ending.
Yeah. It's a complex question, women and voice. I'm very passionate about women's voices.
Let me put it sorry, go ahead.
We have a lot of, men and women, if we're to compare, there are a lot of dynamics that impact why we speak and how we speak. To boil it right back to our beginnings, there is a lot of credibility in the hunter-gatherer genetics of us. There have been really interesting studies about women and communicating and men and communicating in business. There's an extraordinary woman in Australia called Dr. Margaret Byrne, and she's done her thesis on men and women communicating in business meetings across, I think there were 6 multinationals, and she went into meetings and she studied how women and men communicated. And there's been other studies around linguistics. A woman called Deborah Tannen has studied linguistics and the linguistic interactions between men and women. Okay. Women, as they find, tend to, this is a tendency, communicate through rapport. So we will collaborate and we will, in a meeting, if there are more women in the room, we'll have 15 conversations going on at once and we'll all know what's going on. Okay. If there's a man in the room, 10, and you can see this happen in younger children in games we play at school. I mean, it's certainly genetic and it's learned. Men tend to talk by report. So by comparison, this is Deborah Tannen's work. So she talks about women communicate rapport, men communicate with report. So reporting meaning men are much better at telling stories. It's certainly true in Australian culture. They tell stories, they take turns. I take centre stage. I'm having the limelight now. I'm having what I have to say until I finish what I have to say, and no one's going to interrupt me. Right? Whereas women will overlap, and we will be able to make sense of that. So you can imagine the conflict that creates in a board situation or in a business situation about how to understand the language of communicating between men and women. So women's voices are, I think women are very, very good communicators because we're good at reading subtlety and moving subtly. To add one last story on that, there's some research done about young girls in fact this was an American study, so of course it may change across cultures, but American young girls were studied, and around the age of 7 it was found that these young girls began to, because they wanted to maintain their relationships in school, so it was their first experience with groups, they wanted to maintain their relationships with their girlfriends or with their groups. If the relationship was at stake and they wanted to say something that contradicted the relationship, these girls would shut off their voice in order to maintain the relationship. Okay. So it begins around 7, 7 years old, that I will stifle my voice as a girl and inhibit what I have to say because I want the relationship to be supported. That's a very sophisticated way of connecting. Yeah. It's not very smart for myself and what I need to say. Right. So you can imagine now that's why women, I think, in the world tend to have voices that are inhibited. We don't have the skills as much as men do to claim what I'm saying and speak it really clearly and take the stage, and here it is.
Right.
You know.
And if this starts at the age of 7, my God, they've got what, almost two and a half decades of practice before they actually get into the workforce.
Yeah, yeah.
I had no friends growing up, so I had no inhibitions whatsoever.
And you were educated in an American school, so you have freedom of speech.
Yes, but nobody to practice that.
No one to practice
no
on.
audience. Great speech, but no audience.
Yeah.
So something along those lines. What are your plans for doing more work in Pakistan?
Yes. I've been here for 2 weeks and have worked across 10 events, different sizes, the whole days and 2 hours, with all different levels of people. All of them have said, we need you to come back, there's so much work, you know, we need you, we need to speak more effectively. And I do agree, you know, the voice of Pakistan in the West is very biased, very skewed. My experience before I came was one of all my friends and family saying, are you crazy, don't go. Make sure you register with the consulate, you know. When I come here, it's very different. I mean, I've been very well looked after, so thank you, Pakistan.
Yes, on behalf of Pakistan, you're welcome.
I am very interested to come back and continue working because I believe that the voice of Pakistan is one that's very passionate, but also needs support. I don't mean to be missionary in any way, but I do care to help the young voices of Pakistan have a voice in the world, because I think you are misrepresented at this point. So the plan is to come back next March. I've already been invited to come and speak at a conference next March, and have some time here and build some training around that. So you know, certainly open to doing extra workshops in partnership with Oktara, who's a training business in Pakistan. And Oktara have been fantastic in supporting me being here, so we'll be doing some continued work with them. So that's how I would perhaps suggest people get in contact with me, is through Oktara.
Okay, that's great. As far as your work coming back here, and your comment about young people having a voice in the global arena, I think young people need to be inspired to have a voice.
I agree.
So once they recognize that, then there's no stopping them.
Yes,
but
I agree.
It's been a pleasure speaking with you.
You too.
And we're thrilled to be able to have you in the studio, and also have you in Lahore and Karachi.
Right. Thank you very much.
Great. So that was Lucy Cornell, who's the CIO, Chief Inspirational Officer. If you'd like to get in touch with her, you'll see Oktara's contact details and email address on the strip below. Please leave your comments and questions for her, and we'll send her the link so that she can, no matter where you are in the world, you can always log on and just respond to them.
Great.
Until the next episode of MnM, this is Rabia Gharib and Lucy Cornell signing out.